come to see the Sharks play. Talent, skill, speed, intelligence, elite level athleticism. That's not these guys. Biased, one-eyed, opinionated, more often wrong than right. They make up for their complete lack of talent with pure dribble, gibberish, and enthusiasm. This is the ET Stand Podcast.
Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, welcome to another episode of the ET Stand, the Cronulla Sharks fan podcast, where we let our talking do the football. This is another episode of Classic Cronulla Chronicles, where we take a look back at a classic match involving the team we're playing this week at ideally the venue we're playing as well. And hot on the heels of the 2024 Round 12 annihilation, 42-0 to the Penrith Panthers ahead of the Round 13, hopefully bounce back at CommBank Stadium at the new Paramatta Stadium to take on the Eels this Thursday night. We're taking a trip down memory lane. Now, Franko, when you need to pick me up, when you've just been pumped 42-0, what years do you think of?
Avoiding the obvious of 2016, I suppose 2008 was a particularly good one. Maybe 1999, 01, 02. There's some pretty special years out there, I'd say.
Yeah, 2010? Does that come into
No,
yeah, well,
no, probably not on my list.
I think 2016 we didn't play at Parramatta. 2008 I don't think we did either. 1999 we lost to 0. I think it was 22-0 at Parramatta. But we've had some good wins in there too. 2001, that was one game I was looking to bring onto this program, and I will at some stage. We won 13-12, one try apiece, a lot of field goals, and Adam Dykes with a shaky field goal in round 2 with less than a minute to go to beat the premiership favourites after we lost round 1 to the Dragons in terrible fashion at home. So that was a good one. Breckin Morley kicked a field goal to win 25-24 in 2002. Brett Seymour kicked a field goal in 2007. Nigel Vangada scored his first try for the club, and our first Golden Point match, it was a golden try in a Golden Point match to win in 2004 after Daniel Dumas had scored to level things up late there. We had a good win in one of the last games at the old Paramatta Stadium in 2015 where Valentine Holmes kicked a late field goal and then Michael Ennis sealed it with a run and try from dummy half. So we've had some great wins there. Old Trent Barrett, 2009, dare I say it. So it's about 5 matches, but huge shout out. The whole point of this segment is covering these matches that would otherwise have been forgotten. You can see Tim Smith right there, one of the playmakers that probably doesn't immediately come to mind when you think of great Sharks halfbacks or 5'8s. But so one of our commenters and fans on YouTube, known as at Sports Music God, thank you, gave us requested straight away when we were talking about Eels matches, requested this one. And I'd forgotten about this one, and it was great to reminisce. So do you remember this game specifically? Where were you? Were you overseas at the time?
Williams, you were not the only one that forgot this one. I don't think I was overseas at the time. I think this one was during, say, a friend's wedding or some sort of party of some description that had a group of us huddling away to the back room somewhere to try and get it on the TV and have a watch. So certainly a good memory of the event and the time that was happening when this game was on. A little bit less of the game, but I've done a bit of research. I've sort of tried to get myself back up to scratch on this one. And there were certainly moments as I was doing that research that fired the old synapses, and I was like, oh, yes, I remember that. Oh, yes, okay. Yes, and
yeah.
the 2010 season in general started flooding back to me. So it was a good recap.
We'll cover that. I think I was talking to you offline how I'm a bit of a Star Wars fan. I think of the 3 big games in 2016 as a bit of a trilogy. I also think of 2009, 2010, and 2011 as a bit of a trilogy in the opposite way. We've covered a game from 2009. I covered the Raiders win away there with yourself a few weeks ago. We've covered a game from 2011, so the round 2 win over the Dragons at home. We haven't touched on 2010, and we'll see there's some fun matches. This is one of those. I wasn't at this game either. I'd moved to Canberra that year. I was back in Sydney. I was back for a friend's birthday in the Rocks, actually. So I was bouncing between pubs that some had coverage, some didn't. It was pre having KO or Fox Sports on your phone. So I remember, I think it was might have been the ESPN app on an old Nokia or something. You hit
The old
refresh on that.
NRL Live, I
Yeah,
think.
maybe it was NRL Live. I know there was a few different ones getting around, and the actual legitimate NRL app wasn't particularly good, but there was a few, I suppose, payware, freeware ones that were good that had a little summaries. And I remember this one was getting, I think I was getting little summaries of each key moment, and then we hit the front. And I think I watched the last 15 minutes in. It might have been the Belgian Beer Cafe or somewhere in the rocks there. Saw the last 15 minutes or so, and it's a good win. Then watched the full replay the next day. So watching it back did bring me back to that time. But we'll slide forward a bit and have a look. Obviously, Eels versus Sharks was in round 11 of 2010 at the old Paramatta Stadium. Wasn't yet known as Pertec. It was just known as Paramatta Stadium then. And having a look at the form going in, 16-team competition, we're sitting 15th, but technically we're 16th. So it's the Melbourne Storm that have lost all their points, can't accumulate any more points after a salary cap drama, having the was it 2007 and 2009 premiership stripped. So that was hot in the press a few weeks prior to this one. But we were essentially last. We'd only had one win in the preceding 5 matches, which was only a second win of the season against the Knights. Do you remember who the other game was or other team that we beat earlier that year?
It was the team we're talking about tonight.
Yeah,
Parramatta.
Do you remember the score?
No, come on, Williams.
Only
Only you would remember a score like that.
I mentioned it a few weeks ago. It was another win to nil. So we won 11-0. It was 0 at halftime, and we got a standing ovation as we came off. I was definitely at that one. Luke Burt missed a penalty goal attempt from about 30 out to hopefully put the Eels up 2-0 and missed. And actually, a mate in Canberra that was the final leg of a multi. Parramatta leading at halftime, and he stood to win a lot of money and didn't because Luke Burt missed. So that was pretty funny. But Sharks went to the break 0-0. Blake Ferguson got 2 second-half tries, including one with a great big fend on. I think it was Jarryd Hayne, of all players, actually fending off him to score the second down the right wing in front of the ET stand. And Tim Smith, in his first match for the club, having been signed back from England, ex-Parramatta player, we'll talk about him more shortly, kicking a ceiling, icing on the cake field goal right on full time to win 11-0. And then a few weeks later, we beat the Knights. Both those matches, ironically enough, I know you know this, involved a certain coach being moved aside and another coach assistant coaching or head coaching.
An assistant coach, interim coaching, just cause, dipping toe in the water, still listing Ricky Stewart as the official coach for those matches, but wasn't seen in the box and certainly got the fans talking. And even more so after those matches when the Sharkies got drubbed. So it was an interesting time to be a Sharks fan, and it would have been great to be a fly on the wall inside some of those discussions.
Let's just say for those ones, it hit the media later, but Ricky Stewart was, I don't know if he's given the night off, but essentially Flano, who was assistant coach for a few years prior, was given the reins for those 2 matches, and the Sharks got up and got wins. Spoiler alert, Ricky didn't see out the season, and we know what happened with Flano from there. But looking at those preceding rounds, so we got pumped by Penrith, who were pretty good that year, 34-14 with the bye. I remember as the game in Wollongong in early May, we lost 38-0 to the Dragons, who obviously would go on and win the premiership that year. We beat the Knights 26-6 on the Anzac weekend. And then the week before that in Brisbane, we were roundly and sadly annihilated, 44-16. While Parramatta hadn't lost in quite some time, they were sitting 6th. They had a bit of an ordinary start to the season, and they were putting quite a few wins together. Beat Manly, who were fancied, 19-12. Had the bye, beat the Bulldogs, 26-10, who were pretty good that year as well. Beat the Cowboys, 24-18, and beat Souths, 22-8. So they were having some solid wins over quality opposition, while we were, I suppose, a product of that time. You'll see our lineup in a sec. Wasn't that great. So, yeah. Do you remember much about Parramatta, I suppose, about anything to do with them at the time?
Oh, I know that form guide here in your slide with, have them with 4 wins and in 6th position, but this was sort of the beginning of the end for Parramatta. They sort of started their downwards trajectory after this, I think.
Yes.
So
maybe in a false dawn, although there was some good wins in there. You got that.
There were
through
some
that
good
period
wins.
were quality.
I believe they were one of the lower scoring teams for this season as well. So, Sharks obviously also a low-scoring team in this season. Not a lot was expected of this match, I think, although Parramatta were certainly favourites.
Yeah,
But yeah,
Parramatta were
no,
red hot.
they were ready to claim another scalp.
They were red hot favourites. I'll give a shout out to myself for making an error there. You see that position 04, that was from last week's match. This is obviously position 2010. So when we covered the round 1 2004 match last year. But yeah, Sharks weren't going great. Only 2 wins for the season. Parramatta quite a few, including basically on a winning streak, at least 4 or 5 wins in a row before playing this one. I'll have a look at the lineup, so I'll get some music going. Hang on a sec, just to make it feel like we're doing some Friday night football. In this case, Saturday night football. So we've got the Paramedic already with his centre partner, Kristen Inu, and number 5 on the wing, Eric Growth Jr., who would play some reserve grade for the Sharks later on in the halves. Chris Keating and future halfback for the Sharks for 2 matches, Daniel Mortimer. The front row, Nathan Kalis, Jeff Robson, we know that name, and Fui Moi Moi. The back row, Nathan Hindmarsh, Ben Smith, and Feletti Mateo. The bench, Matthew Keating, Tim Manor, Justin Horrow, Justin Paul, the coach, Daniel Anderson. While for the Sharks, back 3 of Nathan Gardner, Blake Ferguson, and Isaac Gordon. Centres of Dean Collis and former Eel Talima Tautai. The halves, Trent Barrett and former Eel Tim Smith. The front row of Cade Snowden, John Morris, another former Eel, and Luke Douglas. Back row, Grant Millington, Anthony Tippo, former Eels Jr., Paul Gallen, locked the scrum, and the bench, Adam Catlerson, Broderick Wright, who I think was a product of the Eels Juniors, Paul Ayton and Socio Barbe, the coach in name and presence for that point in time, Ricky Stewart. Thoughts?
Too good. Yeah, I mean, for those that were here when we were talking about the 09 game against Canberra, or when I was here anyway, it just sort of, the 2010 season sort of continued for us in trying to find players and sort of pinching from that NYC competition, whether it was the right thing to do or not, I don't think had been properly worked out at that stage, especially from the Sharks' point of view, where we didn't really have that great performing team. But you know what, Blake Ferguson was one of those players. He's now sort of had a bit of experience from 09, and he was coming along strong. History will show that it sort of leaves a sour taste in a lot of Sharks fans' mouths. But you know, apart from how that split occurred, there's no doubting that everyone was upset to see him go. He was a really good young prospect. Ignoring the off-field shenanigans, he ended up being an Origin player, Australian player, winning a comp. So he did have a pretty healthy career. And you know, who knows if it was going to be any good if he stayed with us, but certainly at the time he was a bit of a shining light in that lineup, especially in the outside backs. So it was one of those ones that you even mentioned. He scored the double in the previous match against Parramatta.
Yeah, definitely. So I think, he, by this stage, I think it was just before the Bulldogs game in Gosford that he had announced that he was departing to, for those that aren't aware, I'm sure most Sharks fans are, but there are some out there that aren't. He'd left the Sharks, or was leaving the Sharks to go to Canberra to join a club that had a better chance of winning a premiership, because in his view, the Sharks were no chance. And he was, you're right, our big up-and-coming star. He'd scored a hat-trick against Brisbane the year before. He was scoring great tries when, as you said, a few episodes ago, the corner post was still in play. So we could see how great a talent he was, how great a prospect he was. There was talk as well of he was a centre, he could move in close to the ball, future rep player, and he was going. So that was controversial, and we didn't have the best team in that era. Nathan Gardner, another player who came from the Eels system, I believe, had made the step up that year. We had Nathan Stapleton as well, who's not in this lineup. Not sure if he was injured or dropped, but had also played some matches at fullback. Ben Pomeroy, obviously, was a notable omission as well, with Dean Collis and Talima Tautai there. So, it was 2010, again, was a bit of a middling season in that it wasn't a team that was going to threaten anyone, unfortunately. Got some good wins throughout the year, but with Ferguson leaving, and then what was to come later on in 2011 with Snowden and Douglas, it was far from a great era for the club.
Who were our shining lights in this team, really. If you look at that team, you got 3 players, because I would say even Anthony Tupou was a bit maligned at this stage with Sharks fans. You'd say Paul Gallen, Luke Douglas, and Cade Snowden were the shining lights that your tent pole, so to speak, for the team. And you're right, it was a shame. Bit of a funny team.
Yeah, definitely. Well, just looking at that, so we played the Bulldogs away, and that was on the Central Coast at Blue Tongue Stadium in round 17. So that was about 6 weeks after this one, and that's where Blake Ferguson announced they'd be on his way. And I remember attending that match, and it was a real interesting vibe in that he wasn't popular with any of the Sharks fans yet. It's kind of I think those players. Yeah.
Was there a black backflip attempt there from Flanagan when he took over from Ricky Stewart to see if he could get Fergo to stay? I believe. I sort of remember a little bit of shenanigans going on there.
Hit the media, but didn't quite have any traction, unfortunately. So, yeah. So no, Ferguson moved on at the end of this year, but and look at a lot of those players too. So Dean Collis would only play a handful of seasons for us after we signed him for the Tigers. Salima Tautai, similar. So Trent Barrett would retire at the end of this year. So we'll look at the fallout later, but not a great team. But they performed tonight. So looking at the actual match itself, traded some early blows, and then a guy called Tom Humble, who I think was replacing Jared Hayne, just flicking back to Jared Hayne was out, and I was talking about this young Tom Humble guy who I'd never really heard of or didn't hear much of again. He scored an electric try early, straight off the back of an intercept, actually. So we were in a good attacking position, went down the right, made a bit of a break with Collis, I believe. But basically Barrett out to Collis, who turned it back inside to Barrett, who then tried to put it back out to the right. It's intercepted by Luke Burt, who took off, passed it to Mortimer, who then gave it off back on the inside to Humble, who raced about 40 metres to score, but it was about an 80-metre try in the end. Eels were up 6-0. That was after we had some early possession, and Blake Ferguson, talked about it before, made a bit of a break down the right, put a kick into the in goal and forced a repeat set by trapping Kristen Inu. So we're looking good early, and even in the play immediately before the intercept from Barrett, we were looking sharp. Anyway, we're down 6-0. And then shortly after that, our good friend John Morris was held up. So do you have any comments on that first try?
No, not really. I think that was just one of those things that you'd like to chalk up to experience, but it's Trent Barrett who should be all over what's going on. And I think it was just the way the season was going, shake your head, here we go again type moment.
There was a lot of like traffic. So I think he had options on the inside. I mean, this like to go left instead of back out to the right to Collis. Very easy. Me sitting in my armchair getting my critic on. But you're right. When the experience, the old head in the team's throwing a pass like that. Obviously, Luke Burt, the commentators were lauding him. He could find his way around an intercept and read the game well. So, and showed good toe as well for a player who was right towards the end of his career. Anyway, caught us napping. But a few minutes later, about 10 minutes later, 21st minute, we got downfield. Shortly after John Morris held up, we forced a repeat set. And then Anthony Tupou, a bit maligned, gave a bit of a show and go down the left. And it drifted across infield, turning inside, show and go, and went straight through Chris Keating and Joel Reddy to score. A big reach out. I'll go back to the picture there for those that do have that. So that top picture there is Tupou reaching out to score. Ty will try that one, got us back in at 6-4. And we had Tim Smith doing the goal kicking. We'll talk about soon, but he shanked it from, it wasn't a difficult kick. He was a right footer. Missed it, and the commentators were talking about how we had Nathan Gardner kicking as well, who's a left footer, so they were sharing the kicking duties, going left and right. Anyway, that didn't succeed there. We're down 6-4, and then the all-important third try a few minutes later through Dean Collis with a bit of a break down the right, good step back inside to beat the cover defence and score. And then all of a sudden, we got the third try, 2 tries, 10-6 up. Did those ones bring back any memories?
Yeah, obviously the Tupou try, Tim Smith feigning to go inside, and then hits the third one with Tupou But geez, I really liked you touched on that reach out from Tupu. I really liked just the delicateness in which he touched it down. Normally, you see people reaching out when they're stretching like that. They're either half dropping the ball, or they're slamming it, or whatnot. But with players hanging on Tupu, and he reaches out and he just dinks it down on the line there and picks it back up again. It's only grazing the grass for a couple of seconds, and he tucks it under his arm and stands up and celebrates. And it's just a really elegant reach out and plant. I thought that was pretty classy.
Did what he needed to do. He was, I mean, a classy player. He played New South Wales and for Australia, and he copped a fair bit for us. But I think he definitely he had his moments, and definitely that final season too in 2015 before he departed. I was like, he's a classy player. He's provided a lot.
It's certainly one of those ones where, I think the price tag and remembering the time that this was, because if you talk about the price tag today, people would scoff at it, but the price tag
at the
time, he was considered a very expensive purchase, but also everyone was very excited to see him come because he'd been tearing it up at the Sydney Roosters before joining the Sharks. Really silky player, great edge runner with soft hands, and basically got turned into a bit of a battering ram and a tackling machine at the Sharks, which really sort of nullified a lot of his skills and spearheaded that negativity towards, what are we paying him for? What's he doing? He's not doing that much, and he's just playing to a game plan. And I think that in his later years at the Sharks, it sort of opened up a bit more, and he was able to sort of demonstrate his wares. And he was a wholehearted player that was really good in the end for us, I thought.
Yeah, and I mean, the one try that sticks out for me from him was actually his first try that he scored, I think, on debut for us against the Panthers in 2009. Yeah, 2009. It was pouring rain. We've spoken about the game a few times. We've got Brett Carney breaking his ankle and ruining his season, but Anthony Tupou scoring a try, I think it was off an offload and beating the fullback and scoring. We're like, oh, here we go. We've got this wide running back row with some silky hands and footwork. And then you're right, turned into a battering ram. And then the final try that I remember him scoring was against South in the semi-final in 2015, when he was a battering ram. I think it was Ennis stepping out of dummy half, looking left, looking right, turning back inside and putting Tupou over under the post, which I think was the third try, brought the house down, put a 16-0 up, or 18-0 up even. So, so showing both bits of skill. But it was good to see that there. You're right, he had the show and go, the beating defenders, and the delicate put down as well with the big reach out. So good to see from Tupou. Anyway, it wouldn't be 2010 or even that era without the Sharks hitting the snooze button before half time. And come the 35th minute, a big run from Tim Manor, and then future Shark Jeff Robson picked it up from about 10 metres out and just kept on going and buried his way over with about 3 defenders on him to put the Eels back up 12-10. So he had attention from the aforementioned Tupou, Nathan Gardner, and Paul Aton. So Gardner and Aton, not the biggest guys, but Tupou large. But Jeff Robson muscled his way through to score from dummy half, 12-10 Eels. 38th minute try saved by Gardner on Reddy. So Reddy should have passed, but didn't. And then on the 40th minute, right on half time, Daniel Mortimer chip kick, overrun by Gardner. And Gardner got a really unlucky bounce, and then Mortimer kneed it through and regathered and streaked away to score and put 18-10 up. And I think when that try, watching the replay now, I was like, oh, that's a coach killer, similar to the try that we conceded against the Roosters on halftime. But this one was put us 8 points down after we'd done so well in the first half. It's like, that's possibly game there. Don't know, but yeah.
Yeah, I think that little passage of play that you described there just almost epitomizes Gardner's whole career of hero to zero and back again, really back and forth. Yeah. He'd do, the classic line of rocks and diamonds, but he would do something that'd have fans out of their seats and talking about how good he is, and then he'd just do something like that, just a massive brain snap. I suppose it's worth remembering that this was only his second game, making a debut the week before.
Wow. Good call. Didn't know that one. Yeah, I knew it was around that time, but yeah.
Mm-hmm. So, still very much a green skin and coming up in first grade, experiencing the speed of the game and probably, from NYC days, defense is not paramount. So Yeah, it's to be excused, I suppose. But yeah, obviously, we mentioned Stapo had a knee injury, and that's why he was out. And the other tried fullback at the time was Albert Kelly, who had a little bit of a shocker. So wasn't considered again for that position.
Yeah, well, poor Albert Kelly wasn't a fullback by, well, I suppose, his and Ricky's admission, but that was, a different strategy employed by Stewart at the time when he put, I suppose, trying to put his best players on the field, but Kelly was much more of a 5'8", but again, straight out of the 20 system. Again, I think another Eels product, but Nathan Gardner, he would go on to score an electrifying competition head-turning try 2 weeks later against the Roosters. So, you're right, Rocks and Diamonds. And then in the corresponding match the following year against the Roosters at the Sydney Football Stadium, he would, I think you mentioned it the other night, attempt to kick it on his try line or inside his in goal. Bizarrely, instead of just picking it up, it hit the post, went straight into the arms of a Roosters player, and they scored. So it was nothing if not, I suppose, hard in mouth, no matter whether it was good or bad. He was entertaining, let's say that. But, anyway, unfortunately, he did cop an unlucky bounce in the lead up to that one, which allowed Mortimer to, I suppose, knee through and regather. Anyway, 18-10 half time. Following up from that, it was a bit of a back and forward start to the second half. Both teams trading set for set. And then 57th minute, we had an opportunity, went downfield, and then Tim Smith, who hadn't done too much and had been copping a fair bit of criticism, and I think even been dropped by that stage after a winning start to his Sharks career, took the line on, basically did a step, took the line on and scored next to the post to make it 18-16. It was in the commentary just as Greg Alexander was saying that he was about to give Smith a serve for not running the ball, for just being a distributor. He's like, you're a 5'8", you got to run the ball, you're known for your running game. And to Smith's credit, he took the line on and scored. So that brought us back within 2. And then this is one that we're talking about prior. A bit of a bizarre incident happened in the 65th minute with a Chris Keating kick taking a ricochet off Luke Douglas. Ben Smith regathered and then passed on to Mortimer to score. So it looked like the Eels hit straight back. Looked like they were going to go another 8 points ahead, and probably game set match at 65th minute. And there was a bit of a bizarre, I suppose, commentary followed by penalty. If you can talk us through that one.
Yeah, it was a bit of a head scratcher from my perspective, trying to work out what was going on, where the confusion lied. Clearly the Parramatta player was offside in front of the kicker, regathered the ball off the ricochet, and the commentators in the video review were complaining or looking for the downtown and his position in terms of the play of the ball. If he was downtown, then it's no try, and if he wasn't downtown, were they trying to do a clearing kick, or was it an attacking kick, because that also impacts the downtown rule. But he's offside, and he was involved in the play, so I don't know.
He was dummy half, so there was no way he was downtown.
Yeah.
And
so
as we were saying,
downtown.
Obviously, Warren Smith and Greg Alexander had themselves got confused with it. I don't know if the referee mentioned downtown, but that may have triggered them.
Offside, but
offside. He was definitely offside. He was 4 or 5 meters offside and got involved in the play straight away. And I suppose that I think some of the Eels players were claiming, well, there was a charge down. Does that then make it a dead ball? And there is no, I suppose, a loose ball. And there's no offside. It does for the player that's charged the ball down, but when you're offside to begin with and you're within 5 meters of it, or 10 meters of the play, which Smith definitely was, then you can't get involved. He sprinted forward, caught it. Surely he knew he was offside as well. It was a bit of I hate to use this term, but a Pomeroy-like play. But anyway, watching it live, I remember watching that back, was it 14 years ago now, going, oh no. And they sent upstairs like, how he's offside here? So they turned that around. The Eels fans weren't happy. You could hear the boos. And then just minutes later, Ben Smith had another opportunity and a try disallowed you going touch in goal. And then,
scramble on that one.
Yeah, there was mad scramble. Sorry, I've just jumped forward like I tend to do. Straight from that penalty, from that offside play, I suppose, we went downfield. Barrett put a bomb up. And what would definitely be a no try these days with these ridiculous disruptor rules, Cade Snowden ran into the in goal and just was doing these ones. No attempt to play at the ball whatsoever, was making sure he didn't touch the ball. but forced an error out of, I'm not sure if it was Luke Bird or Tom Humble at the back there trying to catch the bomb. Ball goes loose. Paul Layton picks it up and scores. Try. You can probably still hear the Parramatta fans booing. It goes up, got given. So all of a sudden, what are we looking at? A 12-point turnaround there. Nathan Gardner with a conversion from basically in front, slices it and almost misses it. And Warren Smith goes, whoa, that was about as close as it gets to missing it from in front, but he got it in. The boos are still ringing from the Eels crowd. The Sharks are up 22-18. Then Ben Smith, touching goal with some great scramble defence, as he said. And then late on, the Eels with another opportunity. Daniel Mortimer again, who was carving us up, got a line break, chips ahead, loose ball, and Gardner gets the bounce this time, fields it. And then the final play from Paul Gallen, he runs sideways, backwards, forwards, all over the place. Like, just take the tackle, Gallen, and then sees it out. The Sharks get their second win of the year of the Eels, the 2009 grand finalists, and their third win of the year. So any comments on that closing bit there? Sorry, I took all the thunder.
That's all right. Yeah, you've nailed it. However, I would say that I think half the problem with this disruptor rule is that I'm not so sure that's what he was trying to do. I think he was trying to bat the ball back.
You're right. Yeah.
I think he was just trying to bat the ball back. Sure, he wasn't trying to catch it.
Can we get into the players' minds? We can't.
Who knows?
It's a ridiculous.
Right? Big front row running through, the ball's in the air above his head. He's not confident to catch it, but maybe I can knock it back to one of my players. However, did he touch it? Jeez, it looked like he might have touched that one.
Close.
And I'll tell you what, I think it's good that the NRL changed this rule, because a lot of people complain about referees having to send up a decision, but geez, it's not a good look when the referee says, I've lost total view of the ball, so I guess let's check the grounding. And in those scenarios where the video replay can't get a definitive idea of what's going on and the referee has to make a choice, he's already admitted to not knowing what's going on. So it's good that they've sort of at least masked that by sending up a decision before the video referee gets to have a look at it.
Which still has the potential, right? It still has the potential for referees these days as well, because they've got to send a decision out. I can't remember which game it was last year, the year before, but similar thing. The referee goes, I have to give a decision, but I'm actually not sure. So I don't know what sure there is an action on there to go to send up and go, just have a look. I do remember one years ago with Bill Harrigan sending up and go, can you just check that Schmozzle? Because I remember the video referee had to specifically be told what to look for. And I think Bill Harrigan said, I know I'm supposed to tell you something, just check that Schmozzle, check everything. Like, it involved. And they did, and they gave the correct call, I believe. So yeah, that one, you're right, you sent it up. That was back in the days as well. Yeah, the ref's call. I remember us being definitely on the positive end of a ref's call in a match in, I think it was 2006. We were terrible to start the year. The Cowboys were red hot with Thurston off the back of, they made the grand final in 2005. They came down to Shark Park. We were massive outsiders. I think it was Greg Bird that took the tap and definitely got held up. The referee sent it up. He was thinking try, but they didn't make a decision. There was definitely a player underneath him. I suppose he had a good call, but I remember the replays afterwards. It was quite controversial. They're like, how could Bird have got it down? Goes back to ref's call, and he gives the try. So, which was great. But then the flip side too is the daylight robbery from Tony Archer at Marvel Stadium these days in Melbourne, where they put a crossfield kick in, and there was not a camera angle to see if Matt Daylight was onside or not. So they went to ref's call, and he blew a penalty. So I suppose it's probably better with the camera angles and that they don't need to rely on ref's call as much, but I suppose they still do to refer. I think it's better to refer to the on-field gut feel decision rather than going back to it was previously benefit the doubt. So it was either ref's call or in some cases benefit the doubt. And that always puzzled me as to like which way they'd go as well, because sometimes they would. You'd think they go back to ref's call and they actually go benefit the doubt try. You're like, there was a lot of doubt there.
Yeah, it was the Wild West as far as video ref was concerned back then. So we'll give the NRL some props there for cleaning it up, making it a bit better now, even though it's not perfect.
Even though you still got the disruptor. So you're right. Like Snowden was, trying to bat the ball back. I was, I suppose, being a bit cheeky with the waving of the arms, but he essentially
Well, he
could have,
was, but
yeah. But there was
like you said, how do you know?
a bit of intent. Are they going to sit down and put every player through a lie detector? I mean, gosh, we'll turn it. The NFL will be here till next week. But yeah, it's once you start getting into intent, it's anyway. We talk about it, we played at and all the rest calls. But anyway, the good guys won 22-18, and it was a tidy little win to maybe give us a bit of hope, especially given that we did win a few weeks later too, and things again around that time. I think each of 2009, 2010, and 2011, we kind of had a couple of mid-season wins and gave us a bit of mathematical hope to make the finals, then all fell away again. So anyway, we'll move on to the talking points. So touching on before, had Nathan Gardner, the left-footed goal kicker. He then kicked 3 from 3 after Tim Smith commenced kicking on the left side with his right foot and shanked it. I don't remember this too well. I suppose we had Luke Cavell at the start of 09. He had the ACL, had Lars surgery, came back about 10 weeks later and resumed the goal kicking. But yeah, have you seen any, or do you remember off the top of your head any teams that did that with having left and right footed kickers that were similarly good or not and share the kicking?
No, it always ends up because someone's flummoxed a few goal kicks, and so they've handed kicking duties over to someone else. But it's certainly one of those ones that definitely when I was younger, as an armchair coach, it's like, why don't they do that? Because you see certain players bend the ball and nail it from the sideline, and then just can't get that angle right from the other side of the field. And it's like, well, if you've got a good goal kicker or good enough goal kicker who's got your left and right foot, bend it certain ways, just have one on one side, one on the other side. But I guess that sort of starts to fatten up your dependencies of who you need to have in the team and who needs to be fit and healthy to have a solid kicking game. Not to mention, by specializing on a particular side of the field, you would likely weaken your goal kicking from the other side of the field. So if you ever did need to kick from either side, you'd probably have less of a chance. So it's one of those, in theory, good ideas, but I just don't think it works from a holistic point of view.
You're right. You set everything up, have your eggs in the basket of, okay, Tim Smith kicks on the left with the right foot, Gardner kicks on the right with the left foot, and then one of them goes down and injured, and they've got to kick it from the opposite sideline to win the match. You go, well, haven't done that in a while. But I remember a similar chat. They're both right foot kickers, but in 2013 when we signed Michael Gordon, and he ended up taking the goal kicking from Todd Carney, but Todd Carney obviously did a pretty good job as well.
That was to save Carney's hamstrings, though, wasn't it? From memory,
I
mean,
think
not
so.
that Gordon wasn't a good kicker; he was a fantastic kicker. So,
but it did help, yeah. So I mean, there's also talk too of the, I suppose the Bulldogs / Panthers having Cleary and Burden kicking. Apparently, Stephen Crichton is a very good goal kicker as well. I mean, Joel Kane always talks about on SEN how he reckons he's the form goal kicker of the competition, yet he doesn't get a look in for his own club. So I suppose if you got embarrasses of riches when it comes to goal kickers, it's a nice thing to have. We at times in our existence have not had that. Even early days of Nico, kicking none from 3 in the return to Shark Park match before kicking it from the nearest to the sideline after Teague Wilton scored to beat Parramatta of all teams back in round 2 of 2022, and then all those games in 2019 where we outscored our opponents and lost. But also too, we had periods as well. Lucky with Matt Rogers, lucky with James Maloney, lucky with Luke Cavell those years. I remember Mitch Healy, speaking of kicking it from the wrong side or the right side, he always seemed to kick well on the right side of the field, and he was a right foot kicker, which was a bit bizarre. The ones that you'd think he'd get from the left, he'd shank, and the hard ones from the right, including one from the sideline against the Warriors, another one from the sideline at home against Melbourne. I distinctly remember him kicking the ones that was like, oh, he's no chance. Howling wind at Shark Park, Matt Rogers off injured, and Healy kicks from the sideline. Wow, kick like that every time. And then he'd
keep it up.
he'd then fluff a few. But as a couple of times in around that era too, where Blaine Stanley and Jason Ferris got the kicking duties as well. And yeah, love those guys, but neither of them set the world on fire either. But I suppose back then there was kicking off sand instead of tees and all those things. But anyway, that was the interesting goal kicking part. Nathan Gardner, I'll quickly just get his goal kicking record for the club, which I'd completely forgotten about. But he kicked 11 from 17 for a 64.71% percentage there. But yeah,
Not a
moving
bad,
right
not a
along.
bad feeling.
Yeah, not a bad feeling. And looking at Tim Smith, so he kicked for Sharks that year, 4 from 8. So he had a 50% kick record. Whilst for Parramatta, I thought he was a bit more of a goal kicker, but obviously not. They had Luke Bird in that era. So
Yeah,
Tim Smith, I'm pretty sure, was he Rookie of the Year in 2005? I think
he
he might have.
was. Yeah.
Yeah, so real breakout star. Then disappeared to, I suppose, had off-field indiscretions, struggled early '08, and then I think was a mid-season transfer to Wigan, actually, of all places. He went to Wigan, then Wakefield Trinity. So he went to Wigan for a few years, then came back to the Sharks 2010, 2011, played 19 matches in total for us with 5 tries, 4 from 8 with the boot, and 1 field goal. The field goal he got in his debut against Parramatta. So at a win percentage of 34%, 36%. So not great. Only had 7 wins, 12 losses, and then went back to the UK and had some success with Wakefield Trinity, Salford, and then Wakefield Trinity again, and played through to the end of 2015. So what were your thoughts or memories of Tim Smith?
Yeah, it was one of those weird ones because obviously you're right. He had these off-field indiscretions. I think it was bipolar was afflicting him and had problems in various bars and alcohol and whatnot. Disappeared after absolutely lighting up the competition, and then going over to the Super League where he wasn't heavily talked about. But I think there was a little bit of a can lightning strike twice? Carney sort of made his comeback not long previous. Then Barrett made his comeback. Well, who else? Who else is a halfback with a bit of experience plying their trade overseas? Can we bring them back? And there was Tim Smith, so let's bring him back. It was certainly one of those scenarios where you weren't sure what you were going to get. And I'd say after 2 years of him being here, that still rang true, right? Where he'd lace up his boots and you still weren't sure what you were going to get. Some days he'd show what he was capable of, and other days it was like, did you even train this week? I don't know.
Yeah.
It was an interesting signing, almost reeked of desperation. But I think to have a little bit of a segue, there's been, especially before winning the competition in 2016, the Sharks had a raft of signings that if you'd have traveled back in time and told yourself we're going to sign that player, you'd be like, oh my gosh, the Sharks must be flying. We must be doing so well. How many competitions have we won by now? And Tim Smith is one of them, right? You go back to 2005 when he wins Rookie of the Year. It's like, he's going to be a Sharks player. Are you excited? Heck yeah, I'm really excited. No, don't get excited. It's just so funny if you go through and list all of these players. There's quite a few of them leading up to the inevitable grand final victory that you're just like, I can't believe this guy's going to be playing for the Sharks. Todd Carney, Trent Barrett. It's
Yeah,
just,
you
there's
look
a
at
list of them.
some of the halves, like you look at, yes, obviously Tim Smith. You're looking at Daniel Mortimer, who was pretty good during this year. I think Mortimer may have even been involved in Tim Smith's kind of being forced aside at the Eels and moving overseas. You got Trent Hodkinson. Obviously, he broke the drought for New South Wales in 2014, and we signed for a couple of games in 2018 before realising his knee was absolutely cactus and he couldn't move. Even look at other players like Tony Williams. Yeah, you look at so many players. Richard Villasanti,
Yeah.
form prop of 2002, 2003. We signed him in 06 and he's well and truly past his best. But you're right that all these players that would make, I suppose, team of the year, even be close to either rookie of the year, Dally M player of the year, and we go and sign a few years later, and it's not the same. So
Not the
Tim
player
Smith,
you thought you were getting.
yeah, fell in that category. I suppose it was in the fallout of Kamali was moved on at the end of '08. We signed Barrett. It didn't quite go to plan. We lost Brett Seymour. So we started at '09. We've spoken about length about that, but started the season with Barrett and Seymour in the halves, and Seymour had the indiscretion and was sacked, and there was a revolving door from there. We had Scotty Porter come in, and yeah, great to get a local junior in there, but didn't really kick on. And then again, a revolving door here too. Tim Smith, he played about half the matches over that 2-year period. So, and then moved on again. We signed Todd Carney, which was successful, I'd say, in 2012, 2013, but we know how 2014 finished. So, yeah, it's Tim Smith joins that list. Probably his best match was probably his first match for us against the Eels, and then it was pretty so-so from there. Trent Barrett, I suppose, on a side point, showed some good touches in this match, but again, too, I think he was obviously well past his best as well. So, yeah.
He was a yard slower than he used to be, that's for sure.
Yeah. Moving on, Paramatta Stadium. I know about your memories of the place. I used to love going there. I wasn't there the night we lost 74-4 though, so that probably helps that. I was just having a quick look at our record there. So we played at, was it Pertex Stadium, 24 matches in total from 1986. I think it was built in 1985, 86, where they burnt the grandstand down after they won the first comp, I think in, was that 81, 82, when the Eels won three in a row? Anyway, back in the 80s, no, they burnt the old grandstand down, and then they eventually, this Paramatta Stadium rose in the ashes. 24 matches total. We won 13, and the Eels won 11. So obviously had the wood over them for that period. And there were some really good Eels teams in there. Obviously, they had some poor periods as well in the early to mid 90s. Our longest streak was winning 5 matches in a row there. Overall points, they got 535. We got 409. So obviously winning 22-0 and 74-4 would have helped things. But I thought we played the last match there. It wasn't actually. We were the second last match before they demolished it at the end of 2015. We beat them in the third last round, 35-28. They played a final round match against the Canberra Raiders that year. But we did have a period of losing a whole stack in a row there after this one. 2011, 12, 13, 14, we all had pretty big losses during that period. But we had a whole stack of wins prior to that. So we won 2004, 18, 14 with the Nigel Vungana try. We won 25-24 in 2007. We won 13-10. That was so the 25-24 was the 2007 Brett Seymour field goal in Golden Point game. The 13-10 match in 2009 was the Trent Barrett field goal, which was, yeah, I mean, we've got a few games where we've won by probably the worst field goal we've ever seen, so we might need to do a top 5 worst field goals that win the match, but that did the job. And then we won 22-18 in 2010, which was this one, so that rounded out the 5 in a row, and then we proceeded to lose a lot. But there was other games too, like the 13-12 win we'll talk about in 2001, some big wins in the mid-90s too. I remember, 95, we won 48-18 there, and some early wins too, like our first match there, we won 28-16 against a premiership winning Parramatta side that year in 1986. So we've got good memories there. Do you remember any particular ones that you went to out there?
I tell you what, Williams, you're outing me here. You
Sorry.
know I'm a hobbit. You know I'm a hobbit. I
you missed out.
do not travel if I can help it. If I can help it.
Yeah, it is a trek.
Some of you blokes need to drag me to places, and then I'll go begrudgingly. But if left to my own devices, I'm at PointsBet Stadium or in front of my TV. There's no stadium as good as PointsBet. Come on.
Yeah, I mean, you're right. PointsBet does beat the old Parramatta Stadium, but I remember, I think the first time I went, I can't remember what year it was, but they used to have hills at each end, and it was just covered in mud. And then they made it all seating. I think it was about 20,000 capacity. And I remember the first time I went after it was all seating. Where we were seated, I think it was the CWC. We couldn't see the big screen because there was this great big advertising hoard there, and it was by big. That was definitely not what it was. It was this, you might as well have had a little cathode ray tube kind of TV up there, and you wait for the crowd reaction to see what the video ref result was. But yeah, it was a good ground to go to, good viewing ground. The new ground is way better again. I'm sure you haven't been to CommBank Stadium yet. It's local to me these days. It's worth the trek. Hopefully it's for, I hope not a final. I hope if we play a final, it's at Allianz. But yeah, it's too. But we had some good times at Paramatta Stadium, and I think that the final match we played there in late 2015, I didn't go to that one, but that looked like a good Saturday afternoon out at football in the sun, with Fecky scoring a great try down the left to get us back into it after we'd given up a lead. And then went from there. So that was Paramatta Stadium. This was another good win we had there. Moving I've got him in Sharks colours in this picture, but he was playing Parramatta colours this time, scored a Jeff Robson-esque try against us. What are your best Jeff Robson moments? Because I've seen that. I didn't remember that at all because at the time I didn't know Jeff from a bar of soap. But I was like, wow, that's what we got to come. So I suppose Jeff is one of those players that's the opposite to the Tim Smiths of the world.
Yeah, my recollection was I had this theory back in the day that Flano's recruitment was based around who did well against us in the
It's not a
previous
bad
season.
ploy.
Not a bad ploy at all. And I remember there was a game that Jeff Robson did really well against us, and not too long after that, the Sharks had signed him, and it's like, oh, there's another one for the Flano recruitment strategy. Plays well against the Sharks, sign him up. And yeah, to be fair, apart from that game he had against us that did really well, I didn't really think much of him. I think I was in the camp of wanting to see Townsend get a go. The up and coming local junior who'd done everything I thought he needed to, wasn't getting a run. And we've gone and signed another playmaker to sort of step in front of him. Whether it was the right choice or not, I don't know. Experience going over to New Zealand might have been the missing piece that we needed to get him back here to win us a premiership. So all's well that ends well. But at the time, yeah, I was sort of keen to see Townsend get the jersey and have a go. So, I thought he was one of those players that every time you thought he was too old or too slow or shouldn't be in the jersey, he'd do something and you'd just be like, oh, he's proved me wrong again. He's pulled us out of the fire, or he's managed to light up the field and get that show and go try. And he was a good Sharks player in a very dark period.
You're right. So we signed him. You're right. There was the Chad Townsend talk. There was the early 2012 Todd Carney and Wade Graham halves pairing. We lost our first few matches of the year. They then brought Jeff Robson in against Manly on a Monday night, and Robson did great. Had a good kicking game, but he's always just Mr. Dependable, but not the Mr. Vanilla, Mr. Kind of Toyota Camry. Not gonna get you the girl, but maybe get you to the finals, but not get you the premiership. But yeah, you're right. I've got so many good memories of him. So early on, I think it was mid 2012. That half our forward pack were out with a virus pre-COVID. We were playing the Warriors at home. We were down bizarrely. I think it was by like 9 points or something. A Sean Johnson field goal and a penalty goal, and then Jeff Robson, Todd Carney obviously did a few things, but Jeff Robson took the game by the scruff of the neck. He kicked a 40-20. Shoden Goad scored, I think, then set up Todd Carney for the winning try, and then vice versa. And then you're right, he wasn't fast, but he just had that show and go and that turn. He got the go-ahead try against the Roosters when we came back from 24-0 down in 2014. I think it was in early 2013 against the Warriors. He had like 5 guys on him and got the ball down. He just kept going. And then he went to the Warriors for a couple of seasons and then continued going with them and was serviceable. So he got every ounce of whatever he could out of his career. So good on him. And just seeing that at the time, I'm sure I was spewing. And I was like, who is this nobody? Who is this Neville? And then, seeing how he was like for us and going back watching this game, I was like, wow, Jeff Robson just did what Jeff Robson does against us. So good on you, Jeff. Here's to you, Jeffrey Robinson. Moving on to the Eels and Sharks crossovers, quite a few here. So last game we covered was against the Panthers. We commented on how many players played for both clubs. Just rattling through here. Eric Growth Jr. played, I think, when did we sign him? Was that like 20? Gosh, 20.
It was a while after this, 2014, I think.
14? I think it might have been 2014, and he didn't get a run. He played a fair bit of reserve grade, but didn't crack it. I mean, he lived
got
down at
injured,
Cronulla
I
for
think,
years.
playing for reserve grade, and that sort of cruelled his return.
I think he played in the trials. I think he played in the trials, and I remember he carved up. He always seemed to carve up against us. I remember at Shark Park he scored a few big wins against us. Same to as Tim Smith. Actually, he played a blinder in a big win for them in 2004 against us. 2004, 2005, sorry. But looking at going through the lineup, you've got obviously Eric Growth, obviously Daniel Mortimer, Jeff Robson, and then on our side of things, so Tilly Matautai come across from there, Nathan Gardner we'd got from the Eels system. Obviously, Paul Gallen we got from the Eels system. We got Tim Smith, John Morris, even I think Broderick Wright, I think, was from the Eels system. So, yeah, it was a fair bit of crossover during that time.
Yeah.
Any favourite? I'm just trying. Obviously, Paul Gallen's probably up there. Although he never
Well,
played a first grade game, thankfully for the Eels. But we had a few do the switcheroo.
yeah, I guess you mentioned the juniors there of Gallen and Gardner. Earlier you mentioned Albert Kelly was another one we pulled out of the junior system. We actually had a one that a lot of people probably don't realise. Joel Reddy was a local junior
Yeah, you're right.
playing for the Yarrawarra Tigers,
Then went the other way.
and then well, I think he went very west in. I think his dad coached the Adelaide Rams, and so
Yeah,
left the area and spent some time away, and then don't know where he got his education and where he went from being a real young junior, but ended up coming through into Parramatta. Was always a player that I thought, if he was available, and I'd be happily signing him at the Sharks, bring him home kind of thing. But just a weird quirk that I don't think a lot of people realise, that he was one of our juniors. Sisa Vave, he was a Parramatta player, or he was at Parramatta, then came to the
You're right.
Sharks, and then went back to Parramatta.
You're right. He did too. I missed him. There's plenty in there.
Josh Cordoba
Yeah.
didn't play in this match, but he joined us from the Parramatta. He was there with them the year before, and then as we said, the coach also, Ricky
Yeah.
Stewart ended up going and playing for coaching for Parramatta about 2 years later after this one.
I hear they're big fans of him too, with the way he departed, just like the way he departed us. But
love him just as much as we do.
big shout out to you, Ricky. We love you. One final one, I suppose, probably my favourite, just because he started on the Sharks side. He went to the Eels side and then came back. We spoke a lot about him last episode, but Adam Dykes shouldn't have left the Eels anyway. He was part of the halves pairing, the 74-4 loss, him and John Morris. But anyway, there's been plenty of crossovers, plenty of Eel Sharks getting around. But we'll slide right along to the fallout. So 22-18, the final score with the tries to Tupou Collis. Collis was a player, I suppose, that didn't really kick on for us. He only played the 2 seasons for us after a fairly lengthy, he had 2, 4, 6, 7 seasons with the Tigers, crippled by injury. I think we scored 7 tries this season, 2010, and none in 2011, where he only played 5 matches affected by injury. So that was the Dean Collis experience. Tim Smith and Paul 8 on the tries. Nathan Gardner 3 from 3. Tim Smith none from 1. The Parramatta Eels 18 points via Tom Humble, Jeff Robson, Daniel Mortimer tries. Luke Burt ever trusty with his left boot 3 from 3. And you're right, the Eels went on the slide. They were 6th. They, after winning 4 or 5 in a row, slid down to 12th with 10 wins, 14 losses, while we finished 14th with only the Cowboys and the salary cap cheating Storm behind us in 15 and 16 respectively. We had 7 wins, 17 losses, as we were saying before. Though we had a few other fun wins that year. We beat the Roosters by a lot 2 weeks later at the Sydney Football Stadium. So we backed this up with a home loss to the Broncos 20-4 at home. We then beat the Roosters 42-18. That was the Nathan Gardner try. We beat the Cowboys in Townsville with a double field goal effort, including one in Golden Point. I think was John Morris and Trent Barrett kicked the field goals that day. We beat the Roosters at home 18-12 later in the year when they were on their way. I suppose they eventually made the grand final. And the Gold Coast, we farewelled both Matt Rogers playing for the Titans and Luke Cavell playing for the Sharks that day, winning 30 points to 16. That was the Luke Cavell 50-metre intercept. That was 2010. Do you have any closing comments?
I mean, it was really the changing of the guard, wasn't it? There was a lot of experiments going on that season, a lot of trying to plug holes and stay on our feet, change of coach, change of players. It was probably, like you said, there was the trilogy there of 9, 10, and 11. This was, this was the reverse hump, do we say? I don't know.
Yeah.
We started to work our way up here. Obviously, we know what happened in 2013, but this was self-inflicted poor performances that we were well and truly trying to dig our way out of. And I think there were some good moments, like you said. There were some times there where it was happy days, but you look back at this and you look at the team, and I mentioned on the last Chronicle that I was on, I was always optimistic, I was always hopeful, always went into every match hopeful of a win, hopeful of the season, no matter how bad we were going. And sometimes you just look at a team in retrospect and you think, why did I have so much hope?
Why? Yeah, you're so glad that you're not feeling that way at the time. I think obviously 2014 were dark days. 2009 were dark. I think 2009 was definitely darker than 2010. 2010 was a bit of an improvement. There was some promise there. 2011, not as much conversion on the field as we thought there would be. We thought there'd be continuous improvement. There wasn't, but obviously good wins in 2011 too, like the Stewie Mills debut game and things like that. So, and the round 2 win over the Dragons. So they were pretty dark times, eh? You're right. Pretty bleak. You look at it. Any player that's played for this great club, I suppose, definitely is worth taking the hat off to. Anyone that's played first grade, good on you guys. But some players are better than others. Some teams are better than others, and these aren't quite up there. But we're glad, I suppose, we had hope at the time when maybe in hindsight it was like, oh, geez, that was an arsey win, or that was we fluked that one. How do we do that with that squad that we had against the team that we were playing? But anywho,
certainly it's easier to say that at the moment while the Sharks are flying high. It was certainly front of mind when you asked that question, because I was reading an article and an interview from one of the players. I can't remember which team it was or who it was, talking about their chances this year and how well they're going and how much of the improve they're going, and that they're going to have a real tilt at the finals this year, and they're sort of sitting in 10th place or something around there. And you just think, what are you even talking about? You've got no hope, no chance. But if we were there, if I was sitting in 10th and my player was saying those things, I'd be lapping it up going, yeah, we've got a chance. Go boys, you've got this.
Just got to string some wins together, turn a bit of form, sneak into 7th or 8th and see what happens from there. But yeah, it's anyway, we obviously on the back of a 42-0 loss that we won't mention any more of, or we will talk about on Tuesday night, I suppose. But yeah, that was a bit of a pick-me-up, I suppose, talking about a much worse season. I'll start playing a bit of music here to close things out. But if you were there that night, or if you've got any particular great memories of the old Paramatta Stadium, please send them through. Like, subscribe button, that always helps the algorithms. But also, we like a little community that we're forming. Obviously, it's a huge supporting community, and it's just a great avenue, really, to share and experience everything that this season and beyond and before are bringing. So if you've got any favourite moments from this match, please send them through. Any favourite Eels Sharks players, any predictions this week, please do. Next week we play the Broncos away, so I'll probably look to swing us back to 2004. I don't think we've covered any matches from 2004 yet. There was a Sunday afternoon match that was particularly fond in a few of our memories that may have involved Sam Eismunger and Jonah Lomu's cousin, I think it was, Andrew Lomu, tearing up. But also, if you don't realise already, we're on Spotify, so get on there and listen to us audio only if you're that way inclined. Any closing comments, mate?
There wasn't too many happy moments at Suncorp, so whatever you can find, I'll be keen and ready to listen.
Oh, there's been a few, but in more recent times. But yeah, as we saw on that picture, I think it was shared on social media last week, we do have the worst record up there, but we're last start winners, so hopefully we can get another one against the Broncos then. But before that, we've got Thursday night against the Eels in round 13 of the 2024 season. So good luck to the Sharks for that. In the meantime, enjoy. Up.
Thank you for having me.
Thanks, mate. Up, guys. Cheers.